Christine, are we ready? Okay.
Mayor, we're ready when you are.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the study session meeting on February 28th, 2024 to order. City Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Lamb,
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Councilmember Gregory, Mayor Pro Tem Ross, Mayor Carnavale,
Here.
and let the record show Councilmember Gregory is absent.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have no changes, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Will the city attorney, City Clerk, would you please read the statement of participation? Are there any members that wish to provide public comment at this time?
Mayor, I'll read the statement. Public comment is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on items that are within the City Council's jurisdiction but not on the agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The Mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment or request that a matter be agendized for a future meeting. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If you're a member of the public and you wish to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and submit it to the City Clerk. You will be called upon at the appropriate time. If you have materials or other items to present to the members of the City Council, please do not approach them. All materials shall be presented to the City Clerk for distribution. Mayor, I did not receive any request to speak forms, and we do not have any members of the public in the audience.
Thank you. City Attorney, will you please read the closed session item?
I'd be happy to do that, Mayor. We have one item on the council's closed session for today. It's public employee performance evaluation regarding the title city manager. Do not see any member of the public present, so I think you're safe to recess into closed session.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, the City Council will recess to close the closed session. Christina, we ready to go? Christina?
Mayor, we're ready when you are.
At this time, we will reconvene the study session meeting. City Attorney, is there anything to report out of closed session?
Yes, Mayor, I can report that the City Council did engage in the public employee performance evaluation with regard to the city manager. You've completed that evaluation. We will follow that up with a labor negotiation session with regard to the position of city manager at your next council meeting. Otherwise, that's just a normal part of the process, and nothing else to report at this time.
Thank you very much. Study session, item A, Facility Master Plan, Phase 1 final report, including facilities condition assessment and preventive maintenance report overview. May we have the staff report, please, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. One of the things that we've been working on in conjunction with a consultant that was hired was conducting a facilities master plan. This sprung out of the goal-setting session back in 22. It was reconfirmed in the strategic plan last year and actually was reconfirmed again in the strategic plans this year, indicating that implementation will need to be tied to the next budget. But we do have the report on this, and Kevin Biersack is here to give you an update on what it found and the information that's going to be really helpful for us, I think, as we plan for the future.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. And if you have any hard questions, Eddie is in the back row, so you throw them through me or over my head and send them his direction. Thank you. So as y'all are aware of the facilities master plan, this is just an update, and basically what was attached to the staff report was the, I believe, 20-page final report. So just trying to draw from that and give an overview from that report. So feel free, as usual, ask any questions as we go along or save them up to the end. As the city manager said, this dates back to 2022, so here are just some of the key dates with respect to when we've been to you, either in that goal planning type session or in this type of a session where we've actually had the contract. We had the master plan phase 1. The master plan phase 2 has kind of been parked because, as you're aware, because of Tropical Storm Hillary. We've had about a half a dozen items that we have saved for the next budget cycle. But this is the report out from phase 1. These slides you saw last time we were here, but I did want to pull them in as a reminder, and that is for the facilities condition assessments. And we had 18 facilities that were assessed, and you'll see that in a few slides, what those facilities are named. This is the assessment approach with respect to these 5 pillars. Mass Companies was the prime vendor, and they engaged Terracon Consultants as their subcontractor to actually do the FCA, but they accompanied them for that week that they were here on site to conduct the FCA. Then, yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So under project preparation, I see you do a preliminary walkthrough, but as I read the other pieces coming up, I don't really ever see me have a finalized condition assessment, but how do you so I'm imagining, I walk through your house and I say, oh, there's a nick on that piece of furniture. But, I might not notice that your water drain's backed up. Where do we see something beyond just a small, you've just gone and walk through it, perform a preliminary walkthrough? Where do you do a more systematic one?
There is a document that we did not include since this was a synopsis of the final report. The facilities condition assessment is over 900 pages.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
And so that's what happened as a result of that. Was the first deliverable that came after the week-long that they were here. So there was an initial walk around to include Mass Companies because they were the prime vendor. Then in developing the schedule, and we had, I want to say, 14 meetings with them, and they were very good. What a great vendor to actually produce meeting notes that they produced after each meeting. And we have that catalog of that parked. So as a result of those meeting notes, but then when it finally came to the point of them coming to do the FCA, then they were able to share those with the vendor, like they had already shared with us. And then they were able to then do a prelim with them before they actually tied back to that week long that we went from site to site.
And as a prelim, building the hierarchy of when things are
The
going to be?
preliminary was just basically tying back to, okay, this is who this customer is,
I see.
this is what we've identified as the 18. So Mass Companies identified the 18 facilities. So for example, and you'll see, a facility can be the restroom in a park. So from, even though the engineering and public works folks, they manage that park, we then are called upon with respect to the facility.
And so how many facilities do we have in the city?
We have 18.
18 facilities.
Yes, ma'am.
They aren't all bathrooms. Thank you very much.
You are quite welcome. So moving on, also from previously, you had seen this 6 months ago or whenever, is that the categories with respect to the system categories, whether it be looking at the building envelope, looking at the interior, the heating, air conditioning, the electrical, the plumbing, the fire protection, and just the site itself and what it looks like on the outside. So these are the different building system categories that were assessed. Here we are. These are the 18 asset names. They're numbered 101 through 118. They are in the report or in the order of the one that they considered poor, which they already had a leg up on because we had already had identified what we knew ourselves, and that was in March, February-March timeframe, and this facilities condition assessment was done in the May-June timeframe. So the Fountain of Life was graded as poor. We have 4 facilities that are fair, and then we have 13 facilities that are graded good. And these are summarized in the final report. We're going to get to a little bit more on that in the next slide. Yes, sir.
Regarding the previous slide, when you talk about the public parking structure with solar. Now, I did see that there is some work that you probably will discuss that a little bit later, but it's a $2.5 million expense that needs to probably be.
There are 7 items, and those 7 items of the 30 items that are attributable, and that's in a couple more slides, sir, with respect to the parking structure. One of those items is $2.2 million. And when we get to the end, you'll see what we're doing from an assessment standpoint, and we do plan on coming back to you, and we would anticipate that we would want to move out on that item. You can think of simple terms like concrete, membrane, flooring with respect to the parking structure, and then also stairwells. So those are probably 4 of the key kinds of things to think of when we're talking about the parking structure. Nothing imminent, like something's going to happen next week, but from a preventive standpoint and a proactive standpoint, we should move out on that. And to rest assured, we would not be recommending that we would come back to you and ask for you to do that from the general fund. We do have our 4 proprietary funds. So when we get to that, we would be looking to use monies from our facilities fund, not our facilities division that is part of the financial services department and that general fund piece, but from the facilities fund.
What were you saying about solar?
That is part of the solar in the actual parking structure.
Correct. And which was a little, and we explained this to them, we have solar out back. That solar dates back to even before my 17 years. With respect to that was installed in the 05, 06 timeframe. It might even be 04. And so they labeled it parking structure with solar because of the solar panels up on the 3rd floor.
Oh, I see.
So it's just labeled that way.
Kevin, on your grading, poor, fair, and good, poor from 1 to 10, poor being 1, where's fair and good?
They have numbers, and so we're like in the lower single I mean, did you say if one was
Like
good?
if poor is number one, fair is what, and good is?
Like the 3 to 5 in that
Fair is
range?
3 to 5, and good would be?
It would be above.
And is there anything technically above good that we just didn't get that rating? Is there a great or an excellent?
There could be, I can go back and look off the top of my head, I don't remember, but I mean, there wasn't anything imminent with respect to that. Of the $3.2 million that is the total that they identified for these 30 work items, 2.5 is the parking structure. 2.2 of the 2.5 is what we would recommend to you that we would take out of the facilities fund. And some of those items, and you'll see on when we get to the last slide, some of those items are small ticket items that we will do either ourselves or and we're evaluating that now, or we will do with our existing third-party vendors because it's small ticket stuff that we would be able to do out of our own budget and wouldn't have to come back to you. So we're going to actually identify what we'll have to come back to you on and ask for budget approval on, but on the big ticket item, we know where we'll want to recommend that we pay for that from.
I would also like to share a recommendation that when it comes to things like solar or things that are clean energy, there are a lot of grants available. We have a grant writer now. You should, and she's amazing. I mean, well, my 2 minutes with her, she had 2 amazing minutes with me. And I think she could most likely find something to benefit you.
And she is on the lookout, and thank you for those comments. And on the second meeting in March, we are going to be coming to you, not back to you, but identifying what we have done with respect to that first 3 months on the plans for the grant analyst position. And I mean, there's activity every day. And I can give you a headline right now. The 2 biggest users right now that we have are fire and environmental public works. And so we're at least kicking things off in that vein with respect to our grants analysts.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I went. So in the final report, they identify items. We're going to talk about deferred maintenance. We're going to talk about preventive maintenance in some of the items that, as you can see here, where they tie back to evaluate your existing current practices and identify gaps or any additional work that would be required, creating annual schedules for performing preventive maintenance work so that we can mitigate equipment failure or downtime. And they also have a section there where it identifies current staff and or vendors to perform that preventive maintenance work in some of their recommendations. So we'll be talking about that. So here are the excuse me, those 30 work items by asset. So the one thing to keep in mind that I will put out there on the Fountain of Life, keep in mind the work that Eddie and company are doing with respect to the Fountain of Life does not tie back to the safety of the art itself, because what we're doing is hopefully to mitigate people from wanting to climb on that art. So that's a separate issue with respect to, that's something we will need to address at some point in time as well with respect to the art and the life of that art and or the deterioration that that art has experienced. So I just wanted to point that out. If you notice the parking structure with solar, that was bolded just so that we would make sure that we addressed and discussed some of that, and we have. And should you have any other questions, feel free as we go through. But the Public Works building over on Kiley Road has a number of items, some smaller ticket items, not huge necessarily, but they did identify items. One out here at the bell tower for the library, fire station 413.
What's the bell tower need?
I don't remember. Do you remember, Eddie? We'll get it to you. But there was, it might have to do with something that we already corrected because we had an issue out here at the bell tower that we corrected within the last 2 months.
Thank you.
413 in the fire station, which is also the commercial building. 410 on the admin side, Panorama Park restrooms, fire station 412, and 2 here in the Civic Center. Notice there's four assets because they did give credit to the Civic Center, City Hall, the police jail, and the headquarters. Preventive maintenance. Let's talk a little bit about preventive maintenance. And a lot of these things, as you go through here, you'll say, Kevin, these are common sense kinds of things, and it's just a matter of it being documented, and this is what these folks do. With respect to, okay, create a comprehensive checklist of those essential daily tasks. I mean, we have daily tasks that we perform. It's a matter of making sure that we include that in an artifact, and we check that off that we've done that every day. Inspecting the buildings each day or at least on a weekly basis, depending upon what it is, to conduct a thorough inspection looking for any potential damage, malfunctioning equipment, leaks, or potential safety hazards. Cleanliness, we've learned that over the last few years. Cleaning is essential to not only have a healthy environment, but also a presentable environment. The HVAC systems, to ensure that they're properly functioning, that's probably, and you can see this in our demand register, probably our biggest ticket item on a consistent basis is heating and air conditioning, with respect to not just in this complex, but throughout the city. Testing those systems and testing them regularly to make sure that they're in good condition. Taking care of minor repairs promptly. Performing preventive maintenance tasks according to a schedule. Work orders. Work order status daily. I mean, in the weekly report, you'll see that we provide, with respect to the summary information on, let alone the telephone calls or the like, but items that come into the facilities group email that become a work order. And those average anywhere from 35 to 40 a week. On average of what is done with a staff of 3 people on those work orders. Yes, we do contract out, but it's the coordination of coordinating with our vendors and being there to assist them when they do come on site. One of the things that's helping us with the work order status is our ERP, Tyler Munis. There's an enterprise asset management module, and we actually have we're now have started moving out with the implementation for the facilities group. We're already doing things with fleet. We're already doing EAM activities with respect to public works and parks. And the nice thing about this is this will build a history for us of where we've had problems, where we've spent money, so that we better know how to budget. So that we have, on a go-forward basis, we know where we're spending our dollars, rather than just having it up here. And so that's where the asset management system and the ERP help us. And maintaining documentation on what the records are for the maintenance activities. And once again, if we have that in the EAM, that also ties into the financial payments that we make. And there's that linkage between the two that we'll be able to build upon and grow. These things just all make sense. If you create annual schedules for preventive maintenance, what should happen? You should be able to save money, save energy, and improve your performance. It's just logical. If you have more maintenance, you should have less repairs, and it's all about being happy. Let's talk about the staffing. In the final report, the vendor identified our current staff or vendors needed to perform preventive maintenance. They recommended staff additions at the maintenance technician 1, the maintenance technician 2, and then tied to the third-party vendors. These are the different silos of third-party vendors. Now keep in mind, with respect to both the recommended staff additions and the third-party vendors, this doesn't necessarily match up to what we currently have budgeted. And that's something that we need to evaluate and come back to you on and look at with respect to how to ensure. Likewise, with the third-party vendors, when we reach out to the third-party vendors have different types of labor categories and skill sets, so we would expect them to identify, well, they're going to send this kind of a person for a heavy-duty item, but they're going to send this kind of a person for just smaller items. So we rely on them. And so it's a matter of ensuring that we have these different categories of vendors on call. Some of which we already have, but not all. Current management practice assessments.
I just had one question. In terms
Yes, ma'am.
in terms of vendors, the description, I remember we had pretty recently, we had somebody power wash the Paseo. So what is that vendor? Is that? what
So
description is
depending
that
upon
in?
what is done, we do that internally.
Okay.
And a good example of something with respect to going out and renting equipment, based on how many times we need to do that, just recently, Eddie procured a washer.
Okay.
And it was at a very small, reasonable amount so that we would not have to do that. And then actually tied to a trailer that we also procured for a lift, we can also use that trailer for that power washer. And so we can take that to other facilities, not just what you saw here, council member.
Makes you popular at parties.
So on the practices, efficient building operations, establishing the daily practices, vendors, determining the most suitable vendor for the services that we require, staffing, effectively hiring, training, and managing. So here's an example of overlap. When we've been to you with respect to risk management, and we've talked about leveraging PERMA, leveraging existing training resources that we have. And when we came and talked to you in January about risk management, we shared with you that we already had, at that point in time, 4 different PERMA classes that we had already scheduled through PERMA at no cost to us because it's part of our belonging to that Joint Powers Authority. And 3 of those 4 classes are Eddie and his people. And we didn't do this kind of thing before. So we're now doing this. And so that's important because that helps with also the employees being happy. Because if we invest in them and they feel like they're cared for and they're being trained on proper practices, that's a win. Oh, I hit a button. Facilities team training, coupled with the staffing, the business continuity plan, that if we have a continuous operation of maintenance services, that should hopefully ensure that if we have that continuity of operations, that when we have a disaster, we know what we're doing. We're able to minimize disruption. Work planning control, that if we develop a work plan to optimize efforts, minimize downtime, it will help reduce cost and ensure safety. So the fiscal impact, this is a little bit about what we talked about before, but just to make sure, tied to this slide, those 30 items, we are categorizing those items, we're defining them, we will be able to provide that back with respect to those items, and some of these items could have 2 check boxes because we envision 3 columns from a standpoint, one column that is, what can we take care of with our current staff and our existing budget? What can we take care of with our existing budget, but our third-party vendors that we already have on the docket? And then last but not least, the third-party vendors in the new budget. For example, the parking structure and at least the $2.2 million. And once we've completed that analysis, we plan to come back and provide you an update and address any of the new budget work items. We'll also share with you the items that we're going to take care of in the other 2 categories, but we would need your authorization to move forward on the new budget items. Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Now, in order to keep everything in order and to remind us when maintenance needs to be done, have we looked into a computer program that will allow us to do that and not, so we don't have to do this manually?
That's where that asset management system comes into play, and that's where we will leverage that. And that's what, like for example, on Fleet today, it's working pretty well. It's working, that's probably the most mature. And props to the Fleet and Fleet people and Michael Walla, because that one is working like clockwork. Our next implementation was Parks and Public Works. We're working out the kinks. We're doing good things. There was recently a new analyst that was hired, or an analyst, I should say, hired over there, and he's diving in and he's helping tremendously. There will be some nuances and changes based on the original setup that was done. Now that you can do all the good setup that you think you're doing, but once you start exercising the system, you then find out you need to make changes. And so we've identified some of that. And we're going to experience some of that as we now kick off what we're doing with facilities. We're going to identify, the setup that London has done with working with the facilities people, like she did in working with the public works people and Michael Walla over at Fleet, there's always changes to make to the configuration. But that will give us that, sir.
Now, the third-party vendors, do they have to pay their employees the prevailing wages, or is it just a contract?
First, it's a contract, then depending upon the type of RFP that we might go out to them on, that's where the prevailing wage can come into play. So, but first it's the contract. And tied to purchasing, when we've come to you before, now that we actually have our final person starting this Monday, and Patrick, who you know, and he'll be here later this evening because he'll be briefing you on Community Facilities District, he is going to be moving into that proactive purchasing agent role. And in doing so, this ties back to the city attorney's office. We have 3 different types of contract templates now to work with. We've been working with for years the professional services one, but we now have a maintenance and operations contract, and we have an events contract. And so we have a contract template that we will make sure that we're going to go back for, in the final report they talk about, ironically, 14 vendors that are our regular vendors. Guess what? We might have contracts on 3 of those vendors. And we're going to get contracts with all of those vendors. We're going to use the template that the city attorney's office has provided, and then coupled with that, which is kind of neat because of the different things we've come and talked to, then we have our risk analyst who's making sure that the insurance that is a requirement tied to the contract, not just those contracts, but all the other contracts, to ensure that the insurance requirement is appropriate and that they're providing the insurance documentation. It all kind of fits. Grants, contracts, risk, purchasing, it all works.
Now, in the past, we used to, while we're in meetings here, we would listen to and hear the bell go off. Did something happen? The tower.
It was broken. There was something that happened with the bell tower. So from a facility standpoint, I think we've accomplished our piece, but there's an IT piece.
Yeah, there was equipment that was damaged in there. I think, if I recall correctly, it has recently been purchased, the replacement, and I think IT is working with facilities to schedule the install for that. But there had been a delay in, I think, the replacement material coming in.
Yeah, so maybe there's an IT piece now to finish, because that's been an item in the weekly report, here and there.
Nancy?
Yeah, I have a quick one. The 2-point-something million on the parking structure, what are you doing?
What do you mean, what are we doing?
On the parking structure? What specifically is being done for 2
We haven't. This
6
report was
million.
delivered 12 days before Tropical Storm Hillary. And we've identified, we've gone through the 30 items and identified, but it ties back to flooring and membrane, and so we will have to go out with an RFP to identify those items and look, because we won't be able to use existing vendors for the complete aspect of it. Now, some of those other items, we will use existing vendors, but for that 2.2 million estimate, most of that is going to be through a competitive RFP.
And it's mostly for items to bring us up to snuff. We don't have to replace the elevator. We don't have to, there aren't major
Correct.
things like that that are eating up most of the budget.
Correct. So here's a good example of something that's a small potatoes item tied to that's sitting out there. And we've done this internally in some of our buildings with respect to the strips that you do on the stairwell so that people don't slip. Those stairwells, those strips are gone. The tension rods, there's areas where the tension rods are loose. So based on, and that will probably be part of the RFP, but there are some things that we will carve out that we will do, like the tension rods. We will go to where we have an existing third-party vendor that we go from, for the flooring strips, I should say, for the flooring strips. We'll go to that vendor, and they've been doing that throughout these last 18 months on different buildings, and we've been putting strips on stairwells so that we mitigate slips and falls. We need to do that out there. And there's nothing to wait on that. We should just do that.
I know on our main floor, this just came up yesterday at Taste and Sound, on our main floor, one of the fire doors has an alarm going off inside. Those things happen. Not at all alarmed by that until somebody said, yeah, that's been going off for a really long time. Well, probably shouldn't have been going off for a really long time.
And the work that was being done by that vendor wasn't good work. So we're going to be probably going elsewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any members of the public that wish to comment on this item.
No, Mayor, I did not receive any requests to speak.
This is a presentation for only discussion and direction only. There is no formal action required. Meeting adjourned.